in the quiet solitude of early morning, as the world still lingers between the echoes of night and the promises of dawn. There is a truth that older men often wrestle with but rarely speak aloud: the desire for connection with youth, the spark, the vibrancy, the intoxicating pull of what feels like lost time returning. It's not inherently wrong to admire the energy and beauty of a young woman. After all, life itself admires youth. But there is a dangerous line that, once crossed, robs a man of his dignity, his wisdom, and the respect that he's worked decades to build. And today on Stoic Loading, we are going to talk about that line, the one thing you must never do with a young woman if you are an older man.
Because
In the pursuit of her attention, many men forget who they are, and in forgetting themselves, they lose everything. A Stoic knows that desire in its raw form is simply energy, neither good nor bad. What determines its morality and its impact is what you do with it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But to many older men, drawn to youth, start behaving like boys. They dress to impress instead of dressing with dignity. They speak in a language that doesn't belong to them, chasing validation instead of commanding respect. They give their power away, piece by piece, all for a smile, a glance, or a fleeting moment of attention that vanishes as quickly as it appeared. And that is the beginning of decline, not just in romance, but in manhood itself. Here's the truth that will free you if you let it. Attraction without self-respect is humiliation. The moment you make her validation the measure of your worth, you've already lost. You're no longer the grounded, composed man with decades of experience, wisdom, and lessons carved into your soul. You've become just another desperate voice. In a crowd that is begging to be noticed, a stoic older man never allows himself to compete on the terms of youth. He doesn't try to be younger. He focuses on being solid, grounded, and rare. The man who doesn't need her attention, but chooses to engage only when it aligns with his principles and his dignity. Think about the great men of history: Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus. None of them would have lowered themselves for the temporary thrill of validation. Why? Because they understood that every action either builds your character or erodes it. And once you begin eroding your character to chase what feels good the moment you enter a cycle that is almost impossible to escape. This is where so many older men fall, trying to win her over by becoming something they are not. They laugh a little too hard at jokes they don't find funny. They start dressing like they're 25 again. Even start making decisions not for themselves, but for how she might perceive them. And in doing so, they stop being a man. Become a performer. It's an actor on someone else's stage. But a Stoic understands that the foundation of all attraction, real attraction, is respect. And respect is never given to the man who cannot respect himself. If you want to be the older man that young women admire, not just notice, but truly admire, you must stand firm in your identity. You must be the calm in the storm, the one man in the room who doesn't need to prove himself. Because the truth is, confidence in your own path is magnetic. Not because you are trying to be magnetic, but because a man who is unmoved by the chaos around him becomes an anchor in a world full of driftwood. This doesn't mean you become cold or detached. Stoicism isn't about suppressing your humanity. It's about mastering it. When you interact with a younger woman, engage with curiosity, kindness, and clarity, but never neediness. Let your actions reflect that you know your value, and that her youth and beauty, while appreciated, are not enough to sway you from your principles. This is the subtle power that makes the right kind of women. Even young ones respect you without you ever having to ask for it. Here's the mistake many older men make. They believe that by showing more attention, more effort, more proof of their interest, they will win her over. What they don't realize is that this kind of energy reeks of insecurity. It signals that you don't believe you're enough as you are. And if you don't believe that, why would she? In Stoicism, self-sufficiency is everything. Chase, you invite. You don't plead, you present. You don't build your life around someone else's approval. You build it around your purpose, and you let people choose to step into that world or not. Think about it this way. Would Marcus Aurelius ever have sent desperate letters to someone who didn't value him? Would Seneca have begged to be loved? Of course not. Because a Stoic man understands that his worth isn't determined by how others respond to him. His worth is inherent, rooted in his discipline, his integrity, and his alignment with his values. And that is exactly how you should approach interactions with younger women, from a place of grounded strength, not from a place of longing or lack. There's also a deeper reason why trying too hard is dangerous. When you start bending who you are to please someone else, you lose the very thing that makes you valuable, your authenticity. And once you lose that, you're no longer standing in reality. You're living in an illusion, a game you can never truly win. A young woman might enjoy the attention, but deep down, she won't respect you. Without respect, there can never be real connection. So what should you do instead? The answer is deceptively simple, but profoundly difficult. Stay rooted in who you are. Be willing to walk away from any interaction where your dignity is at risk. Engage when it feels natural, but never when it feels forced. Offer conversation, but never validation seeking. Share your world, your thoughts, your lessons, but never in a way that begs for approval. Because the truth is the most attractive. Man in any room is the one who could walk away at any moment and still feel whole. Remember, life is short. And as an older man, you already know this better than most. You've seen how fast the years pass, how quickly what feels urgent today becomes irrelevant tomorrow. Don't waste what time you have left trying to become something you're not to impress someone who doesn't even understand what you've built and survived. Instead, invest that time into becoming the best version of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Because when you are truly solid in yourself, you won't need to chase anyone young or old. They will come to you, drawn not by your efforts, but by your essence. There's a quiet strength in a man who knows his value, a strength that doesn't need validation, approval, or constant reassurance. And in the second half of this conversation here on Stoic Loading, we're going to explore the deeper, more practical side of this philosophy, because theory without action is useless. The principles of Stoicism don't just live in dusty books or on the pages of meditations. They are alive, breathing tools meant to shape your behavior, your interactions, and the way you carry yourself through every moment of your life, including how you relate to younger women. The first truth to embrace is this: your time is the most valuable currency you own, not your money, not your appearance, not even your experience. Your time. And a man who gives away his time to freely communicates that he doesn't value it. This is one of the most common mistakes older men make. They start rearranging their schedules, bending their priorities, and sacrificing their routines just to be available. What they don't realize is that this subtle act of self-betrayal doesn't just diminish their value in the eyes of others. It eats away at their own sense of power. A Stoic man guards his time fiercely. He doesn't clear his calendar to accommodate someone who hasn't earned that space. He doesn't cancel his workout, his reading, or his focus time because a text or a call came through. Instead, he prioritizes his purpose, and by doing so, he communicates without saying a word that his life is full, rich, and disciplined. And here's the irony: the less available you are, the more valuable your presence becomes. Next, let's talk about the trap of overinvesting. When a younger woman shows interest or even just friendliness, many older men rush to overcompensate. They buy gifts, they shower her with attention, they go out of their way to demonstrate their value. But what they're actually doing is broadcasting insecurity. Real value doesn't need to be proven. It speaks for itself. Think of a rare diamond. It doesn't shout, it doesn't advertise, yet everyone knows its worth. Be the man whose value is evident in his demeanor, his achievements, his self-control, and his quiet confidence. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality," and this is where many men sabotage themselves. Build fantasies in their minds, imagining a relationship, imagining scenarios, and then act out of desperation to make those fantasies real. But Stoicism teaches us to live in reality, not in illusion. The reality is simple. She may or may not be interested, and that is not a reflection of your worth. What matters is that you never compromise who you are in the process of finding out. Another key practice is emotional detachment. But let me be clear. Detachment does not mean coldness. It means you are anchored in your own emotional state, regardless of what's happening around you. You can enjoy her company without becoming dependent on it. You can appreciate her beauty without making it your obsession. This kind of balance is rare, and because it's rare, it's magnetic. Most men either chase too hard or retreat entirely. But the Stoic man stays in the middle ground, calm, composed, open, but never needy. This also ties into how you handle rejection or disinterest. Many men crumble when they sense a younger woman pulling away. They spiral into self-doubt, asking, "What did I do wrong?" Or "How can I win her back?" But a Stoic man accepts the reality with grace. He doesn't chase, he doesn't beg, and he certainly doesn't lash out. He simply adjusts his path and keeps moving forward. Remember, dignity is never negotiable. Once you trade it for validation, you've already lost the game. Let's also talk about the importance of purpose. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Women, young or old, are drawn to men who have purpose. Not men who talk about purpose, not men who pretend to have it, but men who live it every single day. A man who wakes up with clarity, who works towards something meaningful, who carries himself with the quiet discipline of someone building something bigger than himself. That man doesn't need to chase anyone. He becomes the gravity that pulls others toward him. This is where the real magic of Stoicism happens. When your focus is on growth, mastering your craft, your body, your mind, you stop fixating on external validation. You realize that your happiness and your peace don't depend on anyone else's attention. And paradoxically, that independence makes you more attractive because confidence isn't loud. Confidence is a man who is fully at home in his own skin, who doesn't need to be chosen because he has already chosen himself. Now, let's address something uncomfortable: the danger of seeking youth as a way to escape aging. Many older men don't even realize they're doing this. They pursue younger women not just out of attraction, but as a way to deny the reality of time. It becomes less about her and more about proving to themselves that they still have it. But Stoicism teaches acceptance, not resignation, but acceptance. Aging is inevitable. Dignity in aging, however, is optional. The man who embraces his age, who leans into the wisdom and depth that only years can bring, becomes infinitely more powerful than the man trying to outrun the clock. And here's the paradox. The man who accepts his age fully, who wears it like a badge of honor, often finds that younger women respect and admire him even more. Why? Because authenticity is rare and authenticity is irresistible. Pretending to be something you're not is exhausting, and people can sense it. But a man who is unapologetically himself, who doesn't try to mimic youth, but instead embodies timeless strength, commands a kind of attention that no gimmick or trick could ever create. So what's the ultimate lesson here? It's this: you are the prize, but only if you live like it. Not because of your age, your status, or your experience alone, but because you've cultivated yourself into a man of substance. A man who is disciplined in his habits, clear in his values, and firm in his boundaries. That is the man who can interact with anyone, young or old, man or woman, without ever losing his center. In practical terms, here's what that looks like. Guard your time. Only invest it where it aligns with your purpose and values. Stay grounded. Never chase validation. Let your confidence speak for itself. Be emotionally independent. Enjoy attention, but never depend on it. Lead with purpose. Make your life about something bigger than fleeting attraction or age. With dignity, embrace the man you are today, not the boy you used to be. When you live this way, you stop making the mistakes that rob older men of their dignity. You stop trying to buy attention, perform for approval, or sacrifice your identity for validation. Instead, you stand tall in your truth, and that truth becomes your power. Remember what Epictetus said? No man is free who is not master of himself. Master yourself first, your emotions, your habits, your desires, and everything else will fall into place. The younger women you're drawn to, some will naturally gravitate toward you. Others won't, but either way, Your peace will remain unshaken, because your value has never depended on anyone but you. At the end of the day, life is far too short to spend it chasing illusions. Be the man who builds. Be the man who grows. Be the man who stands firm while the world spins in chaos. That is the path of the Stoic, and that is the path that will make you not just attractive, but unshakable. This is Stoic Loading, reminding you that real strength isn't in how many people notice you, but in how little you need to be noticed at all.